We spend most of our lives trying to make things easy and not trying to make them hard. But everything that we do in life that we're proud of was hard. There are a lot of people that aren't inspired because they don't have a purpose, or maybe they're lonely and they don't have a, but I think one of the reasons a lot of people aren't inspired is because they're bored, because they're not giving themselves things to challenge them. And to truly be inspired, yes, the goal and the purpose, and yes, the partners, but you've got to have that thing that's hard. And if you're not getting it work, you got to find other outlets for it.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best You podcast. Today, I am super excited to be joined by the one and only Kevin Scott. Kevin, just want to start off by saying thanks so much for spending the time with me today.
Hey, man, it's exciting to be here, Nick. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, no doubt. Anytime I can get a former UGA alum and a fellow UGA alum on the podcast with me, I'm excited about it. So I appreciate you joining today, and super excited for you and the launch of your upcoming book called Inspired Every Day, 3 Indispensable Ingredients to Connect You with Your Passion. So first off, congrats on the upcoming launch. That's awesome. But before we kind of dive into some of the material of the book, I want to kind of go back to you and your story and your kind of history a little bit. I know after you graduated from the prestigious school of University of Georgia, a few years after it, you created ADDO pretty quickly after it, y'all's leadership consultancy. And so I wanted to ask you, I know that starting a company at any time is really difficult, but just a few years after college, tell me about where your headspace was at and what it was like creating your own kind of company and finding your own company at that stage of your life.
Yeah, it's so two thoughts on that. Number one, I mean, I feel like anytime I'm hearing you talk, Nick, you're talking about passion and getting after things and doing that. And I think if you want to start a business, you want to do something like that, you've got to do something that you have a passion for, something that you're passionate about. But I think it can't stop there. If you're just passionate and there's no need out there for it, it's a good hobby. It's not necessarily a good business. You know, if I'm passionate about playing baseball, but I'm not good, I mean, it's a hobby. It's not what I can do for my life. For me, there was this cause that I was passionate about. I wanted to teach leadership to high school students. But I also learned that there was a need. There were a ton of businesses that also needed to connect with high school students. And so starting ADDO was, where does some great passion meet with a great need? And if we could solve a business challenge in a way that aligned with our passion, we'd have that opportunity. So the quick story is we wanted to impact high school students. Guess what? Chick-fil-A is kind of crazy. A lot of people don't know this. 200,000 team members. 70% of them are under the age of 21. Okay, so to me, that's a company that needs to connect with high school students. There's probably a million others too, but they need to be with high school students. They need to build brand affinity, and they need to create a talent pipeline. So we said, we want to impact high school students. You need to reach them. Let's meet in the middle. And we created a program called Chick-fil-A Leader Academy that reaches high school students across the country.
Wow, that's insane. I mean, it makes sense because of how many restaurants they have and how many people are probably under 21, but that's a crazy stat that 70% of their employees are actually under 21. So let's actually continue down this route because I wanted to go down this route anyway. So when you're building a program for Chick-fil-A on kind of helping to develop high school talent, if you will, and helping to develop their leadership skills, I'm sure you guys have a long, drawn-out process that would take hours and days to really actually dive into. But I want you to kind of give us some of the high-level thoughts that you guys have from ADDO on what it takes to build a program to develop high school leaders and talent.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, leadership principles are timeless. The way you communicate them is what needs to change. So, we're taking principles that have been true for thousands of years and just being a translator, helping to do it in a new way. Nick, I grew up I'm kind of a nerd in this. Like, I loved Zig Ziglar and John Maxwell. Like, I ate it up. Like, we're kindred spirits here. It was amazing. Here's what I learned. Like, a lot of the guys that I was hanging out with my age didn't resonate with that. And it wasn't because what they were saying wasn't true. It's just because the language they were using, the examples they were using were older. So number one, first thing to do for students is just like, I would say this, communicate the leadership principle and the language of the learner. So communicate the leadership principle and the language of the learner. That's number one. The second thing is, and this is going to sound terrible, but I think most leadership stuff is crap because because it's theoretical and not practical. So and let me just give you a real clear example. So if I'm in high school and I'm learning a leadership principle, that leadership principle can be true, it can be amazing, it can be life-changing, but I finish learning that principle and then I'm in math class. And what I mean by that is you don't have an outlet to apply it. So Nick, when you're talking to professionals, like they learn something and they can apply it to their context. So what we wanted to provide was an outlet for high school students to actually be leaders. And so the centerpiece of the program we've created is the theme is impact through action. And their job is to create programs that make an impact in their school. And the leadership principles really create a context for what they're learning by doing. Let me maybe just say it one more way. Like they're learning by their actions. The lessons are putting language around what they're learning and experiencing them so they can contextualize them to apply that again in the future.
That's so good.
That makes sense. 100%. Okay, I told you that I was going to be insecure. You were going to ask me about working out because that's right. But like, I think one of the best ways to teach somebody something like that is you teach them how to do something and then you explain to them, this is what it's called. This is why we're doing it this way. This is like, that's how we're teaching leadership. They're just doing it. And then we're saying, hey, this is what that's called. That's called communication. And this is a principle you used with it. And this is how you can use it again in the future.
I think that's so true. I think oftentimes people have to experience the learning without even necessarily knowing what they're learning. And then when it's revealed to them, what they actually just learned, then it really sinks in. I mean, that's so much what public speaking is, right? You tell a story and then you're kind of backing people into the lesson of the story, but you only communicate the lesson of the story at the end of it. And so oftentimes people sometimes people are understanding it along the way. Sometimes people get smacked in the face and like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that's where they were going with it. But they grasp it because of the story and because of the context.
You're right. And you intuitively get it. Here's what I tell you. I think most of the time in education, they don't get it. And it's not their fault, but they're like, oh, we're going to take this principle and we're just going to teach it. And they're doing it the opposite way.
No, 100%. And I'm glad that you said it the way that you did. First off, the quote of communicate the leadership principle in the language of the learner, that is so key. And then how you talked about leadership is often theoretical, not practical. And especially in the education and school environment. I know me personally, I always got good grades in school, but I never felt like I knew exactly how to apply what I was learning to after I graduated. Like I went to Georgia, graduated in finance and risk management and started a business and felt like I had no idea how to run a business. Luckily, I've gained a little bit of knowledge along the way, but I'm like, I shouldn't graduate from a business school from a really good university and not necessarily know how best to apply all the things that I learned, but being thrown into it and then backtracked into the lesson is so massive.
So true. Yeah. I'm in full agreement with you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I'm interested with high schoolers. What are maybe some of the toughest things to get? I can imagine that some high schoolers would be maybe resistant, or sometimes in high school you can have a bigger ego than you should. You think you already know it all, but then all these people are telling you leadership principles. Just, I guess, generally speaking, I'm interested in the challenges of working with high school talent and trying to develop them as leaders.
Number one, I mean, what high schoolers and this next generation is craving is authenticity. So, as technology has progressed and entertainment and quality of videos, for a number of years, the move was, and you probably know this in your world, like we're going to make the video better edited and more professional and cool, like all of that. And now the kids that we're doing, like that we're talking to, have got they got an iPhone that they're holding up, and the videos, if are on YouTube or TikTok, like the production quality has actually decreased because what they're looking for is somebody who's just going to be real with them and authentic with them. So that's the number one, I think, lesson is how do we be authentic? And let me just share with you a challenge we learned. In an effort to be relevant, I'm using relevant in quotes, we kept trying to get talent that was younger, that was closer to their age, all of these kind of things. And what we learned a lot of times is we ended up hiring actors to tell stories. And while those people were cool and relevant, what they didn't do well is they didn't have their own stories. And I think we mistake sometimes. We're trying to be so relevant. A lot of times students, they don't want something that's polished as much as, even if the person that's talking to them is 40 or 50 or 60, like, be real with me, share from your experiences, and also share your successes and your failures. So I just want to go back to something. Remember, you and I talked about Zig Ziglar or John Maxwell or those guys, amazing guys, but a previous generation, they wanted a stage on a stage. They wanted somebody to say, let me tell you, I'm amazing. Here's all the things I've done. That's what they valued. The next generation wants somebody to say, hey, here's what works. But man, here's all the areas I've totally failed and it didn't work and how I've persevered through that. So authenticity and vulnerability.
I like it. I think that's very true. I think it's increasingly probably lacking. So I think anytime we lack something, that's kind of what we deep down end up wanting to desire. So that's key. I'm interested in the organizations that y'all have worked with, like Chick-fil-A, the Braves, Baltimore Ravens, these different organizations. What have they communicated to you guys with regards to the improvement that they've seen amongst their organization and how that has led their organization to be more effective, productive, efficient, and have a stronger culture?
Yeah. I'd love to tell you, because of our work, that's when the Braves won the World Series. That's, the Baltimore Ravens, they just hired Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator from Georgia. They're going to go to the next level now. Let me give you the reality of the situation. The work we've done for Chick-fil-A was originally for high school students who did not work at Chick-fil-A yet. So they're external. But what they learned was the communication principles that worked for that program work also for their internal employees. I don't know if that makes, like, they need, they want more relevant content. They want it to be in their language. And so the work that we now do, I would say, this is not like public marketing language. I'm giving you like the Kevin, just what I think we honestly do. I think people hire us to do internal marketing. Okay, here's what I mean by that. When you're creating a marketing campaign for a company, you hire an ad agency, and you're very intentional. Like when the Super Bowl was a month or so ago, whenever they did the Super Bowl, it's like you need what is the ad going to look like? What's the colors? What's the messaging? You're so intentional. And then for most businesses, when they roll out a new thing for their employees, they don't care about what it looks like, what it feels like. It's just the information. Like I still talk to people that are getting onboarded at a new company, and they're like, all right, day one, pop in the VHS tape on this little TV. You're going to watch sexual harassment training for the next 2 hours. It's like they don't even think about it. So if you treat your employees like the greatest link to help communicate your values to your customers, I think you've got to be more intentional in the way you communicate with them. That's what those businesses are hiring us to do internal marketing to help. Sometimes it's create the content, but really, how is it going to be communicated to your key stakeholders and your employees?
We'll be back to the interview in just a second, but first I wanted to share some words from a participant of the 10-week transformation. At Best U, we started running the 10WT back in January of 2020 and have since had 313 people and counting go through it. They've seen their bodies get stronger than ever before, they've seen the stubborn fat finally come off, and they've seen their habits dramatically improve. And honestly, more than anything, they've seen their self-confidence skyrocket. If you want to learn more about the 10-week transformation, then you can go to nickcarrier.com/10WT. That's nickcarrier.com/10WT. We'll get back to the show in just a second, but first, here's what they had to say.
Hi, so I completed Nick's 10-week Best You transformation, and I can't say enough about my experience. But I was looking for something to help me be more accountable and to just develop overall better habits. And I wanted to make sure that I was getting that strength training in, because I think that was one of my weak points, was not consistently getting strength training. The groups, the people in the groups are all different shapes and sizes. I felt very comfortable right away. It's a very supportive environment. Nick is great at bringing you in, at kind of meeting you where you're at. The workouts are so thoughtful. He's so good at creating a balanced workout. So if you go 2 times a week or 3 times a week, you can be sure that you're getting, you're working all of your muscle groups. I definitely got way stronger throughout that 30 weeks. And I feel much stronger now than I did when I started. I feel more confident in my ability to execute on those exercises. And like I said, I can't say enough. Nick is so good at what he does, and I think it's only getting better. So you are in excellent hands with him.
Basically, companies are not doing a good job of selling their employees on what they do and the values and the mission and the vision of their company, when it's really one of the most important things that you need to do, so that then your employees are both fired up to be working for the company and can actually embody those values when interacting with customers and everything like that.
Yeah. And you use the word sell, and I think that's the right word. And sometimes sell has like a negative connotation. Like, I'm not trying to sell them, they should just be on board. But like, I think it's being intentional to make them to be bought into it. And the organizations that we work with that are seeing the greatest success, that's what they're willing to do. They are intentional in their communications with their internal stakeholders.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I want to dive a little bit into Inspired Every Day and the 3 indispensable ingredients of inspiration. And so, if I understand correctly, your 3 indispensable ingredients are a purpose to live for, a problem to tackle, and a partnership with like-minded people. I think that oftentimes when I know I've come up with lists of certain things or frameworks for certain things, usually there are instances or stories or moments that led me to think in that way or form that framework. I want to ask you, what are some of the things that led you to kind of identifying those 3 as the 3 indispensable ingredients?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that lead to that. The first thing is that conversation that we were just having about people, internal employees, like that is maybe the biggest problem that businesses are facing right now, is this labor problem. Just you may have seen this, but like sometime in the last couple of months, Gallup came out with their latest study that said 79% of the American workforce is disengaged at work. 79%. So statistics would say even the people that are listening to your podcast, 4 in 5 on average, are not engaged in what they do. And I believe at the root of that, or the root of disengagement, is a lack of inspiration. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to phrase to you the question that I've asked thousands of people over the last few years. The first question I've asked them is this: are you inspired at work right now? Are you inspired at work right now? And unfortunately, I'm talking about like CEOs. I'm talking about entrepreneurs who started their own business who are passionate. I'm talking about amazing people. 9 out of 10 people would tell me, like, I don't know if I'd use the word inspired. And then I'll ask them this question, though. Can you think of a time that you have been inspired at work? And it's like, yeah, immediately. Like, oh, yeah. And what I would do, Nick, is I would ask them to describe to me, what was it like when you were inspired? Because what I was trying to figure out is, could you reverse engineer inspiration? Like, could you actually create the environment for inspiration to exist? And through those conversations and some extensive research, here's what I found. To be inspired, all 3 of those things you mentioned have to be present. I'll hit them quickly, but there's one that I think most people miss. Purpose. Now, if with a normal audience, Nick, I would talk about purpose a lot. I've listened to your podcast enough. I mean, if people that listen to your podcast don't understand purpose, they haven't been paying attention, because I feel like you talk about it all the time. But like, I think your people, your tribe, they get that. Like, I got to have a goal. People, and they're signing up for a 10-week program. Like, they want a goal. Okay. Purpose. I'm going to hit partner first. Partner is somebody in it with you. You can be a solopreneur, but like, it's your clients, it's your customers, it's the partners you work with on things. Like, it's maybe a spouse or a friend. Like, the epidemic of loneliness is huge. We need other people. So that's purpose and partners. But this is the thing that I think most people miss. The times when they were most inspired, they had a problem or a challenge to tackle, like some big freaking thing standing in their way. And when you have all three of those, that's the environment to be inspired. And that problem piece is the one people miss all the time.
That's so good. I think, like you said, your quest to determine whether or not you can reverse engineer kind of inspiration and create the environment in which people have the ability to be consistently inspired. I think 100%, I've 100% seen that. Like, everybody, you mentioned the 10 weeks, everybody has a goal that they're looking for. We have a close connected community of people who are working towards it. And everybody has the problem of the busyness of their life, like trying to eat healthy with all this kind of stuff. They've got a galore of problems that they're trying to face, and that keeps them inspired.
Okay, let's just talk about this for a second, because I think people in your program, but people in general, this just anchoring on this problem piece. Like, when somebody finishes one of your 10-week programs, like, that's got to be hard. Like, it's not easy, but they feel so proud when they're done. Like, when I go out and look at cars, like when people run a marathon, they put a sticker on their car sometimes that says 26.2. But why do they do that? Because they're proud of something they accomplished that was hard. Nobody goes out and puts a sticker on their car that says 1.0. Like, running a mile is not. So let me ask you this. We spend most of our lives trying to make things easy and not trying to make them hard. But everything that we do in life that we're proud of was hard. And so there are a lot of people that aren't inspired because they don't have a purpose, or maybe they're lonely. They don't have but I think one of the reasons a lot of people aren't inspired is because they're bored, because they're not giving themselves things to challenge them. And to truly be inspired, yes, the goal and the purpose, and yes, the partners, but you've got to have that thing that's hard. And if you're not getting it work, you got to find other outlets for it. And maybe that's in your physical activity. Maybe it's in your intellectual, like books you want to read, but you got to be challenging yourself.
No doubt about it. I think that, like, the thing that you pointed out is so good. We spend our whole lives trying to make things easier when really everything that we're proud of is difficult. And obviously we want to make certain things in our life easier so that we can make the meaningful things maybe more difficult, but I think it's important to intentionally try to attack challenges, right? It's not, you don't want everything in your life just to be hard just for the sake of being proud of doing everything. You want to intentionally seek out challenges that you wish to overcome, that are actually going to grow you, that are actually going to allow you to level up into an upgraded version of yourself.
Can I give you just something that I've learned in the last 2 weeks that has been blowing my mind in this area? Because what you're hitting on is key. And I think people have asked me, like, okay, Kevin, everything in life shouldn't be hard. Like, I don't want everything to be hard. So what should be simple and or easy and what should be hard? And this is what's become clear to me, that we need to make our systems more simple. So systems should be simple, but we want the effort to be hard. So when I'm talking to a business leader, Nick, I tell them that great leaders simplify systems to amplify effort. Simplify. So systems should be, if we've got a system that's difficult and creating problems, that's stupid. That should not be hard. We got to make that easier. But we shouldn't be telling you, like, you shouldn't have to apply yourself in this area. You shouldn't have to give effort. By the way, I think that's one of the things that makes, like, a lot of the things you do for people from a health and fitness perspective so easy is you've created a system that's simple, but it's not easy for them to do. And if you'll simplify systems and amplify effort, that's the magic, the sweet spot, I'd say.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so good. That's so good. And kudos to you for like identifying and being able to verbalize that. I think that's so critical. And I think that because of ever advancing technology and our ability to be able to make things super easy, it makes it that much more important that we're intentionally seeking out challenges in our life. Because I really believe that one of the big reasons, not to go off too much on a separate thing here, but I really believe that a huge reason for so much anxiety, depression, so much negative emotion simply because we don't have enough problems to solve anymore. All of the problems of getting food and the problems that people used to have to deal with aren't problems anymore. And so much of our time, energy, and attention isn't dedicated to solving those problems. It's dedicated to be like, what should I be doing? And then what's the meaning of life? And so we go in all these different terrible mental directions because we don't have to solve as many problems anymore.
I'm in full agreement. You're spot on.
Yeah. Well, and then I think the one thing with the problem is I think it's really important to actually identify what the problem is and almost give it a name or identify a few of those things, because people know that certain things are difficult, but if they don't know what the problem is, then they don't know what they're up against. But if you can name what they're up against, if you can name the team, you can name the individual, you can name the thing that you're up against, then it's a little bit more inspirational to be like, that's what I'm attacking.
Yes, I'm in full. You got to name it. One of the things that I do think just naming things in general is helpful. One of the things that was a struggle in writing the book, but I pushed to, is that if you're sitting here and you're not feeling inspired, how can you help identify what piece might be missing? And so we've said, like, if you're missing the purpose, you got problem and partners, but no purpose, you may be feeling aimless. Or if you've got purpose and partners, but no problem, you may be feeling apathy. Or if you've got purpose and problems and you're not having partners, you may feel alone. But like, how can you name something? And there is such power. This sounds a little self-helpy, but I think you're spot on. It's like when you name something, it's so much easier to identify and start to figure out how to tackle it.
Oh my gosh, no, that's so good. I think that asking yourself the question of what am I missing? I think that's massive. For me in particular, that hits home with me because as an entrepreneur and having started Best You a while back now, I was always inspired by my purpose and knew I had a bunch of problems to tackle, but I had nobody that was working with. It's just me. And so I've always said that for me, one of the toughest things about entrepreneurship is for a while, it was just a individual sport. I didn't have a team, and I love team sports, played team sports growing up. I didn't have the people to work with. And I think that for everybody listening, ask yourself that question. If I'm not inspired right now, then ask yourself, am I missing a purpose? Am I missing a problem? Am I missing partners? I think that you hit it on the head. That was such an important question. Well, I want to, before I ask the last question here, Kevin, this has been awesome, man. I just want to acknowledge you for being able to first connect your passion with a need. I think like the passion and the need to form a business is absolutely massive. And what you're also best built and capable of doing is just massive. And you were able to obviously serve your clients at such a high level to be able to develop young talent, which is just so cool to see, and kudos to you. And I want to acknowledge you for putting this book together after I know years of experience and years of dedicated research to this topic. I know that it's going to help so many people have more lasting inspiration and being able to identify their purpose, name the problems that they're trying to solve, and seek out different partners to keep them motivated along the way.
Awesome, man. I'm pumped about it. It's I mean, when I hear that 79% are disengaged at work, that's where it's like, we've got to figure out how to help people.
That's the problem, baby. You're identifying the problem.
That's right.
That's awesome. All right, you guys make sure you go get inspired every day. We'll have the link in the show notes and everything like that. And also make sure you follow Kevin on Instagram at Kevin Paul Scott if you do not yet already. Any other good place that people should go learn more about you?
You can go to inspiredeveryday.com. That takes you straight to the more information about the book.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Well, last question here, Kevin, is I think that in order to get closer to the best version of yourself, it's both a constant journey and a unique journey. I don't think that we ever actually get to that best version of ourselves. And I also think the way that you're going to get there is going to be a little bit different than the way that I get there. So last question is for you personally, is if there are 3 things that you could currently do or 3 things that you could currently work on to get closer to the best version of Kevin Scott that you could possibly be, then what are those 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on?
Oh man, I've got them, but I hate to say them. All right, number one is and I've written about this. I know this to be true, but number one is to learn to say no more often. Like I just my default is a people pleaser, and if I could say no to some good things, I think I could focus more on the best things. Number 2 is I think just consistent time alone, like whether that's from a like faith perspective and a quiet time or just not with a lot of stuff coming in. So that'd be the second. And third, I would just say just more intentionality with those people that I'm closest to. And that's kind of broad. So let me make it like, I'm talking about my closest coworkers, my wife, my kids, like just not being on autopilot, but being intentional in that. So saying no, that time, quiet time. And I think if I did the first 2 better, the third one will come naturally.
That's awesome. Well, those are 3 great things. You guys need to make sure you go get inspired every day to learn those 3 indispensable ingredients for leadership: identifying your purpose, identify the problem, and then get partners around you so that you can have more lasting inspiration in your life. But Kevin, that's all we got, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.